Good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 1 of the preview show for Delta T Racing on Tuesday night. I'm Nell Boy, and I'm here with my co-host Bogarowski.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the preview show. This preview show will be about our Division 1 in DTR, where we're going to talk. What are we going to talk about, Neil? We're going to talk about the races from the week before, the upcoming race, heated battles, maybe any newsworthy things, and that's it, I think.
Yeah, really anything of interest that we're going to bring up, obviously, that's happened over the past few. Obviously going to look sort of ahead to this week's race and offer our predictions as to who we think's going to be battling for the podium and pole position.
I think that is basically what we're going to do. As we already have one race under our belt. Also good to know, Nell and me are going to be your commentators for this season for Division 1. So we had one race already last week, and we're going to talk about that in a bit. But what we haven't really done together is have a run through who's racing, who is on the grid. And I think what we're going to do is right now is going to run through the grid, who's on which team, who are the candidates for the title, podiums, race wins, or last position. I don't know. That is what we're going to go through. So where do you want to start now?
Right, okay, so looking at the teams on the grid this year, obviously running through in alphabetical order. First of all, we have Alfa Romeo, who are the defending Constructors' Champions from last year. In the team, we have DRA Yari and Marcel U95. So, Bog, what do you think about this team this year?
I think this is a very dangerous combination. Defending champion as in team, yes, but not the drivers that drove for a team. That is good to know. Now I think Yari is on pure speed probably the fastest driver we have in DTR, and I think he didn't win the championship last season because first of all he missed a couple of races and was unlucky in a few, and Shabby was just more consistent overall. But if he is there every week, has a bit of less bad luck, for me he is the big favorite to win the Drivers' Championship. Anyway, and he has a teammate, Marcel. Wow, that is not really the slowest driver of the field. I think Marcel, what can he do? I'm not sure because I haven't seen him race in a lot of races, but I think Marcel is top 8 at worst. So he could actually be like the perfect backup to Yari, as in he could even be third in the championship, but he could as well be 8 or whatever. But it's a championship, so it's about a consistency. But I think this is a team that has probably one of the top drivers and one of the drivers with from the tier right behind the top 3.
Yes,
that's how I see it. What do you think now?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously with Yari, I mean, he showed such impressive pace. I mean, obviously, before the start of the season, he'd taken part in 17 races and he'd won 9 of them. 13 podiums, 8 pole positions. He finished third in the title last year, and as you say, missed a few races and had some bad luck. I think he's going to be the man to beat this year. I certainly think he's going to run Shabby very, very close. And Marcel, as you say, I mean, a fair newcomer to our league racing, but certainly on his day can cause an upset. I think you could be right. Certainly around about the top 10 for Marcel, and Yari I think is going to be up there pushing for the title.
Yeah, could very well be. And I think with this combination, they are both going to do really well, I think, in Drivers' Championship with Yari fighting for the title, Marcel not that far behind. And I think that makes him instantly one of the big candidates for the constructors drivers as well.
Yep. No, completely agree with that. With the strength they've got in that team, they will certainly be up there pushing for a top 2 or top 3 place in the Constructors' Championship.
Yeah. They could win it. Right, so Alpha Tauri next.
Right, so on to AlphaTauri, who were 4th in Season 2 last year, obviously with a complete new driver lineup this year. We have ERTG Chalkers and El Trocker will be their drivers for this season. So what's your opinions on these two?
I think this is also one of the strongest teams. Two very good drivers. Of course, Chokers was pushing for a title last season until very late in the season. And actually for a long time it looked as he was the man to beat, until some poor races in the end, some bad luck in the end. And on pace he's definitely one of the better drivers, but he does need to make sure he stays out of trouble. And if he can do that and stay consistent, quick, and not get the pressure to him, I can see him doing top 3 again, maybe even the championship if it all goes his way. His teammate, Trucker, well, he's been a very pleasant surprise so far. We're going to talk about his result in the last race after this, but so far he has already shown he is probably just as good as his teammate. So I think 2 drivers that will probably be in the top 6 of the championship, and just like Alfa Romeo, a team that could win the constructors. That is my guess.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I mean, with Chalkers, I mean, obviously last year I was lucky enough to commentate on D1 for Season 2, and Chalkers was a very consistent driver. Unfortunately, towards the end he started having elements of bad luck, and just the odd mistake just crept in, which let Shabby back into it. But he's going to be there or thereabouts this year. I mean, obviously he's got 4 wins and 12 podiums on his record, 5 pole positions, so he's no slouch in qualifying either. So I expect him to certainly be up there in the top 3 or 4, fighting for wins pretty much each week. With regards to Trocker, I mean, obviously I saw him come in for a few reserve races at the tail end of last year, but looks very capable driver. I think get himself settled in the car and in the division. So he's already got 1 podium from 2 races, so I think again he'll be more than capable, and AlphaTauri will be there pushing for the constructors title.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So definitely a strong team. Next team, if we keep going in alphabetical, is the Alpine team, and now I have to be honest with you. I mean, there are no bad drivers in Division 1. Everyone is quick. And I know could wish I have the pace that any of these drivers have, but I'm a bit in the unknown with the Alpine drivers. CPI De Roy and Martijns 23. I have seen them a few times. I know they can be quick. And but I don't think this is a team that is going to be in the top 5.
No, I think you're right. I mean, they're both obviously, sort of fairly new drivers to DTR, sort of only 5 races between them. But I do remember from last year, I mean, De Roy was there or thereabouts in a few races, again, just sometimes wrong place, wrong time, dropped him down the order, has picked up a podium in his 3 races, so a bit of an unknown quantity.
Yeah, I agree, and I think especially De Roy is a driver that could surprise on any given day, be among the top 5 podium, maybe even a race win. It's possible. And I know Martijns is not slow either, so they could do well on a day, but over a season I think they lack the consistency to be good everywhere.
Yeah, Yeah, I agree. I think they'll be struggling, but if they can pick themselves up some points and potentially some of the races pick up some podiums as well, you never know where they'll end up.
Yeah, and the next team, Aston Martin, is with Kiko and Bren 2408, or as I'm sometimes call him, Danish Bren, as we also have a driver called Brent, and it's more to like avoid name confusion. They are a bit less unknown as the Alpine drivers, and I think especially Kiko is a guy just like DeRoy, can surprise on any given day, get a podium here and there, and maybe Brent can do the same. But I'm not having high expectations from these guys.
No, I think as you say, it's going to be similar to the Alpine. Kiko, again from last year, he was there or thereabouts in quite a few races. The element of sort of bad decisions on pit stops and some bad luck and some bad decisions. I think it's just anybody with racing, but he's certainly capable. He's got the speed of breaking into, I'd say, the top 8 on a regular basis.
He did have a podium already in Division 1, I'm pretty sure he'll be able to repeat that once, twice, maybe even 3 times this season. I think that's the role. And as for Bren, I don't expect him to be top 10 of the championship standings, but he could do well on a day. Like have a top 5 result somewhere, and maybe even a podium if it all goes his way. But I think that's what it. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. With Brendan, he shone in a few races last year, but I think, as you say, I think probably just outside the top 10 is where he'll be looking at his position for the season.
All right. So who do we have next?
Moving on next, we have Ferrari. 12th in season 2. They struggled with their drivers last season, but they have got brand new signings this year with our champion DTR Shabby and his teammate Wesley. So moving across from Alfa Romeo from last season, moving into the Ferrari camp. So what's your take on these then?
Well, I could talk about these guys forever. Because that's just mentioning the resume. They're won prizes. They're won the amount of pole positions, fastest lap, race wins, podiums. These guys have achieved in their racing careers, not just in DTR but also in other racing leagues. That's a book in itself.
Yeah.
And just the starting point. Just their statistical resume. I remember Shabby coming into a different league a few years ago, and it took him about 1 race to win, and I don't think he's ever stopped. For example. So, but to me, for this season, I think Shabby, he won Division 1 in both seasons so far, having a rival in both seasons and only coming out on top on the very last moment. And the question is, why did he win it even with the strong competition? Is because he is not just fast, he is so incredibly consistent. It's hard to beat that. You can beat him 8 times in a row on track, but that one race or 2 races that you miss out because you made a mistake or someone took you out or whatever, that's where he is gonna score the extra points and still beat you.
It's his rate of recovery as well, I think, so quite amazing. The amount of times I've seen him involved in an incident and
he is not even the best qualifier, because he does make mistakes in qualifying, and if that's due to taking too much risk or not really fully concentrated, I don't know. but it occasionally happens, and he's starting from the back. But you'll still see him on the podium at the end of the race, and that is what separates him from others. And I think Shabby is I think he's going to be in a fight for the championship with Yari, possibly with Chogerskin, and maybe someone else who can chip in as well. But he's not going to finish lower than third, whatever happens, and it could very well be first again. That's my take on Shabby. And then he's having a teammate. Well, where did Wesley end up last season? What was his position? Do we know?
Season 2, he was 9th in season 2.
Ninth. And that was in a season where about everything went wrong for him. What could go wrong?
He couldn't buy any luck, could he, last year?
No, and that is, he's still ending up 9th among the best. This is the guy who became champion in Division 2 in Season 1, and already has lots of podiums in Division 1, I think even a win, pole positions. So he's a very, very consistent driver, has won so many things, and I don't think for Shabby he could have like a better teammate, because he's going to score. He's always going to score, and that makes them, for me, like the ultimate favorites for the constructors. Personal Wesley, if he has a good season, he could end up from 3rd to 4th in the championship, and if he has a bad season, well, like last year, that's what's going to happen. He's been somewhere between 8 and 10, but that's I don't know. But then, he's going to have to drive backwards to not be in the top 10.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I mean, with Shabby, there's just, I just run out of comments for him. I've watched races where, as you say, back of the grid, works his way through, still wins or gets a podium. It's all about consistency, and he seems to make those mistakes in qualifying, but then he's so solid within the race, and that's what you need, the consistency. And Wesley is so unlucky last year. Had some really good races, but just had no luck, but played an absolutely amazing supporting role for Shabby towards the end of the season.
Yeah, I think that's very good mentioning that Wesley, despite someone who really loves to win and has won a lot, is able to sacrifice himself for his teammates when he has to. Plus, and I want to add one more thing to this team before we go on to the next one. Wesley is excellent on strategy. He's the guy who you want as your engineer.
Yes. Yeah.
As tell me when to pit, what should I do, what choice should I make when there comes a safety car. That's when you want to have Wesley on your team, because he's going to make the right decisions.
Okay, next up we have Haas, 11th in Season 2. Again, they struggled a bit for consistent drivers and point scoring opportunities last year, but so with a new driver lineup this year, we got DiMX50, who was the Division 5 champion from last season, and No Jug No Problem, who was or also a promotion from Division 5, finished 12th in Season 2. So so what do you think? Obviously, being involved with Division 5 last year, you'll have more of a knowledge on these guys.
I have raced with them, I have commentated on them, and the development that these two young guys have made is incredible. DiMX was a bit unknown, but made a giant leap from Season 1 to Season 2 and only become better and better and better. And No Jug came in new last season, and he was basically back of the grid in Division 5, but by the end of the season he was reserving in high divisions and getting podiums in Division 3 and 2. That's what you call development. And to my opinion, these are, and I'm going to call them kids because they're quite young and we are old men, so we are allowed to do that, in my opinion. If they put their mind to it, this will be a learning season where they can develop and become a real threat in the future. I think it's going to be tough first few races, but if they keep their head down and keep focusing and keep practicing and training like they did last season, they're going to get better and they're going to get used to the fierce competition that they have, and they're going to score more and more points during the season. And I think during the first half of the season it's about scoring a lucky point here and there. But if they do as I just said, they could score big points by the end of the season if they just keep their head to it. Yeah, that's my thought. I mean, it's going to be a tough season for them. I know that.
Yeah.
Because these guys are used to being up front, on pole position, on front row, winning races, being on the podium, and now they're like, if they have the perfect quality, they're barely top 10.
Yeah.
You know? And that's a different mindset, and they just need to keep pushing and training and practicing, and they can get. If they do that, I am 100% certain they can get into the top 6 of the Division 1.
Yeah.
It could be the future, yeah.
Yeah, I mean certainly. I mean, I agree. I mean, DMX50. When I was watching him last season, it was when he was on form. It was the only competition he had was himself. To be honest with you, but yeah, he was a cut above, and I mean, he's certainly got the ability to do well in Division 1. But as you say, it's just a matter of learning. It's going to be really tough because you're used to winning week in, week out, and then you're struggling in sort of 14th, 15th. But if he can keep his head up and keep at it, then yeah. I agree. I think he could be pushing for the top 6. No joke. So I raced against him a couple of times last year when he reserved in Division 4, and again, he's got a lot of pace. He's just getting that consistency right. But yeah, I mean, certainly a massive improvement from the start of the season.
Yeah, and I think I want to add one thing, because them being in Division 1 may be a surprise, but if you compared their last season's quality times, and it was most of the time was one of these guys on pole, their time would have been top 10 in Division 1 already. And that shows that, especially for No Joke, the one lap pace is there, but now he needs to convert that to doing it consistent in the race and staying out of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, that's the issue. Obviously, qualifying just the one lap. He's doing it over to 33 laps or so. But I'm sure he'll get there with, sort of more races under his belt, sort of more experience, more comfortable with the speed and the racing around him. Yeah, I think he'll do well this year. Moving on, we are with McLaren, second in Season 2 last year. I think the team up last year was Michael and Chalkers. Obviously, off to pastures new. They've got new drivers in this year. So their first driver got H2O Spectre, and their second driver is Xavi. So what's your take on those then, Bob?
An interesting combination, the Spaniard and the Irishman, and both are good drivers. They're not top of Division 1 drivers, but they're around like 10th position.
Well, both promoted from lower divisions as well. Let's not forget, obviously.
Exactly, because Xavi was one of the top drivers in Division 3, and H20 Spectre was fighting for the championship in Division 2 until the last race. I think he ended up third. And Xavi's a driver who reserved in Division 1 already a lot of times, and he's getting good points already there in the past. So these are guys that are really reliable, that will score a bunch of points, like in the range from 6 to 10, and on a good day they can be there on the podium. And one thing that really surprised me is at the previous season race, how they work together. Because what I noticed that they were behind each other was Portugal, I think, and they were in the top of the race, also due to circumstances by keeping out of trouble while all the others were in trouble. But they just helped each other out with giving toes and overtaking, making room for the other, and yeah, it showed that these guys are good teammates, and that could bring them far.
Mm. No, that'll be good, interesting to watch out to see how they do work together during the season. So, obviously, I mean, Spectre, I don't know too much about. I mean, obviously, as you say, did well, sort of fighting for the title last year in Div 2. Xavi, watched him a few times in when he reserved in Div 1, and so, again, more than capable of being up there or thereabouts. Just getting that consistency and getting a break sometimes as well.
Yeah, it's not drivers that will be there fighting for the championship, but they will be fighting for good points.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think they got to aim for perhaps being a podium as like a win for them, but it's you never know with some of these races where you're going to end up half the time. So, right, so that's McLaren. We're moving on to Mercedes, third in season 2. Got a same old partnership back together again with DTR Black Mamba and Boss Mots.
Wow. Yeah, I'm saying wow because I love those guys. But if there's ever 2 drivers in a team that could change the name to Unlucky Both, it could be them, and even more so Boss Mots.
Mm-hmm.
These are the guys that will score top 5s. They will both be on podiums. They could possibly win a race, maybe 2, but they won't fight for the championship. Unless all goes well, they could make a run high up, I think, for constructors. But if you're so unlucky as these guys always are, it's impossible to win a championship. I've seen these guys race for years, so it's not like I'm talking about a fluke moment, but I just remember like season 1 Austria, where Boss Mots is fighting for the win on the last lap with another driver, and he just in the last lap, while going for the overtake for P1 with just like 4 corners to go, he gets pushed wide, ends up on the grass, spins round, and ends up in P14 or something. That is the Boss Mots luck. Being really quick, being up there, but when it matters, something happens. And yeah, Mamba, a little bit less of the bad luck, but also a little bit better results usually. I mean, don't be surprised when you see him on a podium or a win, because he's good enough to do that, but you won't see him there every week.
You're right. I mean, remembering last year, it's just, these two, I think they were racing for Williams last season, and just so unlucky, the amount of other people's incidents that they got caught up in.
I do want to say, I do know one other driver in this division that is more unlucky than these 2 guys, but we'll come up to that soon.
We'll come to that later, yes. But yeah, I mean, certainly with sort of these 2 drivers, I mean, if they can just get some luck and a bit of consistency together, I certainly think that we're looking at sort of top 4 or 5 for the constructors, and
and they can both be. They're both going to be top 10 in the drivers, and if one of them has a good season, he could even be 3rd, 4th, 5th in that range.
Absolutely. Well, I will keep my fingers crossed that Mamba and Boss Mots get some luck at last. I think it's long overdue, so fingers crossed season 3 will be it for them. So we are now moving on to Red Bull. 6th in season 2. Again, they struggled a bit for consistent drivers. But this year they have a pretty capable lineup, to be honest with you, with DTR Prince and Invisible as their drivers. So what do you think about Prince and Invisible then, Bog?
Wow. These guys have been teaming up for years now, actually, in different leagues as well. Well, Prince, I think I mentioned it during commentary actually last week. If Prince has a good start of the season, and no spoilers, but he had, he could actually put up a fight to get in that top 3 of the championship. Because he's quick. He's probably not as quick as a Yari or Shabby, but on certain tracks he's going to be very, very close on them, and tactically he is, well, maybe even better than Wesley. You know, that is so. But during the season, if you want to have a run on a championship, all have to be going your way. You can't have bad races or bad luck, and I think it's a matter of that. And you have a good start with a couple of podiums early on in the season, and you could make a really deep run. That's how I see Prince. And his teammate, he should change his name. Just because I mentioned when we talked about the Mercedes boys. Yeah, well, or you could say invisible stands for others cars don't see him and just take him out.
I think that's it. Yeah.
It's either that, or you should change his name to Unlucky. You know, because whenever someone spins off and he takes someone with him, the guy that's going to be taken with him is going to be invisible. And it was the same last week. Let 1, who was the first DNF of the season, invisible. Why? Because someone spun him and took him out. It's just, yeah, it must be frustrating. And because I know, and I've seen him drive many times, he is not slow. He's a good driver. And especially, what I like is he has like a sort of specialism on old school tracks, like tracks like Spa or Imola or Silverstone or Suzuka, Brazil, or on pace, on those tracks, on those old school tracks, you're going to see him fighting for a podium or even a win, if no one hits him. You know, that is, yeah. I just have never seen Invisible had no bad luck 3 races in a row. So
I don't think I've seen it happen 2 races in a row, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
He's so incredibly unlucky. He really is. The amount of times last season you were looking at it thinking he's got himself in a good position, good result here, and then you're right, he would be. I mean, he would be taken out by a rogue Will in the middle of the road if it came to it. You know, if anyone was going to hit it, it would be Invisible. He's so unlucky, but yeah, really capable driver. So you know, hopefully he'll have a good season at last. I think it's probably long overdue. But we say with Prince, yeah. I mean, we know Prince from old. He's very capable. I actually think he's a dark horse for the title this year. If you look at last season, he managed to finish in 4th, and he missed, I think, the first 3 or 4 races before he actually joined the division. So again, you know, I mean, 2 wins last year, 6 podiums. He's more than capable. So I'll be honest. I think Prince is going to be up there fighting with Yari, Chalkers, and Shabby. To be honest, I think could be a good 4-way battle.
Right. Well, let's hope for him that he is able to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hopefully I haven't jinxed him now. So if I have Prince, sorry.
No.
Right, so moving on to our final team, we have Williams, 5th in Season 2, obviously, as we've covered before, with Mamba and Bossmots in their team last year. This year they have Livingwall, who was a permanent reserve for us last season, now stepping up to a full-time seat, and Florian, who we have moving up again from Division 5, finished 4th in Division 5. So Bog, tell us a bit about these two.
Tough one. Florian, he can be incredibly quick. He is basically not slower than his Austrian friends Black Mamba or Bossmots, but keeping it clean, and then I don't mean like foul driving, but staying out of trouble. That has seemed difficult for him, and not always because on his own. I mean, I can remember like an incident from last season in Division 5 where he was fighting for P1 and he was in second and about to overtake actually within a lap or two the number one and take the win in Silverstone. And then he got taken out by a backmarker. So it's once again a driver that is not really born for luck. But still very good, very fast, clean driver. I think he is going to be around P10 in the championship, or score an occasional good result, but not the consistency or quickness to score good everywhere. And Livingwall, Swedish guy by the way, good driver. I think he's about the same pace as his teammate. Good on tactics usually, but yeah, I don't know. He's going to score regular points, and maybe these are guys that I see get maybe an occasional podium, but if they have a good race, they're going to be top 6, 7 in the race, and that's it. They're not candidates for a title or top 5 in the championship. That I can't see that happening. But hey, anyone is welcome to surprise me and prove me wrong.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, I'd class both of these drivers as probably a little bit rough around the edges. I think they've got the whole package. It's just a matter of just polishing it up ever so slightly. I mean, Livingwall certainly got tremendous amount of pace when he wants to, but it's just literally just lacking that consistency. And Florian too. So I think, I think they'll score points this year, but I certainly don't think they'll be fighting towards the top end. But I think a regular points finish would probably be a good result for them at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
and with that said, I think we've had all 10 teams, did we?
We've gone through. So yeah, I mean, literally just going through. I mean, obviously, I think we're pretty similar in our tips that Ferrari are probably going to be the constructor championship this year. Certainly going to be the team to beat. And then we're probably got a 3 or 4 way title battle with Shabby, Prince, Chalkers, and Yari. So it should be an interesting season.
I think I agree, but anyone who disagrees, just say so in the comments, and especially on track, guys, prove us wrong. You know, if you think we've underestimated you, or maybe overestimated you, could be as well. Tell us, show that on track that you are the one to beat, and that we are just 2 old foes that have been, I don't know, walked away from an old puppet show or something. I don't know. Anyway, Neil, I think it's time we move on with to talk about last week's race. A long first edition because we had to do some preview for the season. Also, guys, if you're listening and you want us to talk about something in the next episode, a certain subject or something, or what comes to your mind, or you have questions for us, ask them. You know, do it either on the Discord or put them in the YouTube comments. Very welcome all to do so. So please do, as we're gonna talk about last week's race in Bahrain, where unfortunately due to some technical difficulties, I had to commentate on my own.
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Oh yeah. See, this is where I go wrong. See, I need you, Neil. Bahrain is tonight. Last week was Saudi Arabia, and what a race it was. It was safety car riddled. It was very tactical, and in the end, I think I don't want to say it was undeserved because the winner was phenomenal. But I don't think it was the fastest driver on track who won.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
And because we can say that because you all know the results, it was in the end it was Prince who won his first win in DDR, I think, by basically being better tactically under the safety cars than his rivals.
And keeping it clean, no penalties.
Yeah, and keeping it clean, no penalties, because in the end Yari crossed the finish line at first, but he had a time penalty, so Prince had all he had to do in those last final laps is stay close to him, and he didn't have to take any risk with being too close or make a move, because he knew with the penalty that Yari had, he would stay close to him and he had to win. So it was Prince with the win, but the fight for P2, 3, 4, 5 was so intense, and it was fun. Yeah, and we actually saw like a drag race to the finish line between Shabby and Trucker, and initially giving Trucker the P2 by the game, but the stewards reversed that when they saw a finish photo that it was actually Shabby who crossed the finish line in just before Trucker. So that was the podium, and due to the time penalty, Yari dropped to P4.
Yeah.
So that means from the 4 candidates that you mentioned earlier for the title, 3 were in the top 4. So there was one man missing actually in that in the results list on top, and that was Chokers. He started the race very well. He was, I think, second. Didn't have a great start. He got pushed wide a bit at turn 1, 2 with Yari, dropped to 5th position. But then for a long time he was just with his teammate Trogger and with Shabby and Prince in that fight for P2-3, but somewhere it went wrong, and when it went wrong it just kept going wrong for him, and in the end I think he had to retire. I don't know exactly, I haven't seen fully what happened, but I think he hit the wall.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't one of his better races, but it does seem to be it's sort of a bit of a spiral for Chalkers when it starts to go wrong. He seems to, almost never seems to reverse itself for him. It just seems to get worse and worse. So not a great start for him, but it's only one race. We've still got another 11 rounds to go, but certainly he would have been looking to get some decent points on the board early on. But we'll obviously see how he does tonight at Bahrain.
Yeah, I think he'll be very eager to bounce back from that. More about last week's race. Well, if we go through the finishing order, behind the top 4 in 5th was Mamba, who, well, for a moment I thought he would actually going to be in the podium when we had a restart after a safety car period, and he was, I think, in 5th or 6th, just behind Prince, and both had no time penalty, and that was the moment where I think, hey, these 2 guys could be on the podium and possibly fighting for the win. But in the end, Mamba still got a time penalty for exceeding the track limits too many times, and had trouble getting ahead of Shabby despite his much fresher and softer tires. But so that's prevented him from being on the podium, but still very close to it, and some good points there, so good to start off with.
Yeah, you got to think, obviously qualified in 14th as well, so it's it was good to make up those positions, get himself up into the top 5. So good race overall by Mamba.
In 6th we had one of the reserves, DTR Brent, who, I'm gonna be fair, Brent had a shocker of a race. Always in trouble, but re-grabbed himself on the last safety car and made the best out of it with that late restart, and moved up a lot of positions and still ended up in 6th, so good points for him. Florian in 7th, good points. Was always up there in the top 6. Good strategy, well done to him. And in 8th, another reserve, Uchiha Bruma, the man who said at the last race of the season, "I'll never race this game again." But then came a new season, and it started to getting itchy. And he was in the car, as we had a few open seats, and not a great race, but in the end, with the late safety car, still managed to get some points. So well done to him. In P9 we had Savi, who had a bit of I think in the end the opposite strategy with staying out long with those mediums didn't really work out for him, as he dropped back a bit, still 2 points. And in P10 the final point is a driver who I think will be very happy with the point he took. No joke, no problem, the Canadian. As I think mentioned in the season preview earlier, they'll be scraping points at the beginning, and they have to see that when they get one, see it as a podium, as a victory, because it's going to be hard to score some points in the beginning, but this should be a great motivation for them to keep going and keep fighting, to get even better, to get more points.
Yeah.
And for the rest, I think just outside the top 10, we had Spectre, Wesley, Living Wall, Bossmods once again spinning on the last lap of the race, and Kiko in 15, and for the rest was all non-finishers. So I think that's it for last week's race. Yeah?
Yep.
And with that, I think we will get to the final part of this this first bigger episode, and that's the preview for next week, where we do go to Bahrain tonight. And first things first, the pole record is not going to be broken. And if you ask, why is that? Well, that's very easy, because that pole time was basically set before an update that made every car slower. So it's going to be quite hard to improve on that, as the pole time now is 1:24.399, sorry, by Justice. But last season, I think it was Brent with pole position, and he had a 1:25.888.
1.5 seconds.
Yeah, and Brent had pole position. He had fastest lap as well, but he did not finish the race. Unfortunate for him. But what the podium was Yari, Chevy, and Michael.
Yep.
So I think if we look at what do you think now, as for this race?
I don't know. I mean, I have to admit, Chalkers does like this track. He goes well at Bahrain. Shabby again. He's I remember a fairly strongish performance from him last season. But I'll be honest. I mean, I'm going to put my money on Prince. I think he's got a bit of a run of form at the moment. Seems to be, we've got to grips with that car quite early on. I think I'm going to put Prince as my potential winner. I'm going to put Shabby in the top 3. I think that goes without saying, and I think Chalker's probably going to get himself on the podium. So yeah, I'm going to go for Prince, Chalkers, and Shabby as my top 3 for this race. So I've probably put the kibosh on all of them now, but that's what I think it will be without incident.
Yeah. I'm going to have a little different prediction. I agree that Prince is on fire lately, and he could be up in their podium as well. So I'm just gonna mention my podium finishers in any given order, but also knowing there is gonna be 2 guys that want revenge from last week, and one of them is Yari, as he he was basically quickest in Saudi Arabia, but just got unlucky with one with the first safety car and two with the time penalty, dropping from the podium while you finish first. So I think Yari will be very eager to get back revenge and take that win. And I think Chalkers will give it anything to get back on the podium and get back in the race for the championship. So those are my three candidates for the podium. As for pole position time, it was a 1:25.888. So it will probably be a bit quicker this season, as drivers just improve as long as they play the game more. So I'm gonna stay with three numbers behind the 5. I'm gonna go with 1:25.777.
25.7.
Yeah.
I think we could see a 20. Was it 25.5?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be that quick.
I think there's people with a lot to prove, and obviously with the the extra competitive edge that we've got in this division now, with so many sort of potential people pushing for the win. I think we might see him pushing a bit more. So yeah, I'm going to stick my neck out and say 25.5.
All right, interesting. Well, we'll see what it's going to bring us further. It's a track that does get a safety car out quite easily, so strategy might play a big part with that if there's a safety car. But on this game, a one-stop could be possible. On previous games, the better strategy was actually more like a medium to hard or soft to hard, if you could stretch that. But I could see soft medium or soft medium soft when there's a late safety car, and I think that's going to be it for strategy. So I think people will start off on a one stop and adapt wherever the safety car is. But I think we're going to see Yari on top when the finish flag is out.
We will wait and see. We'll probably be completely wrong, and it'll be somebody completely different. But you never know. There's never a dull moment at DTR. So we'll look forward to the race, whatever happens, and hopefully it will be a classic, and we'll see some good racing carrying on from that we saw in Saudi Arabia in the last race.
Hope so. Yeah, I hope to see a good race tonight, and once again, guys, surprises. Make it a good one for the show, for us, for yourself, and to all viewers, listeners. If you have any questions, remarks, just do it either on Discord or in the comments. Do you want us to talk about something else next week or the upcoming weeks? Just let us know. Maybe you want someone to be interviewed, or you want to talk about a certain subject, or you want us to look at a race moment, for example, and talk about that. Yeah, sure. It's all up. Whatever you want to hear, we can adapt to that as well, even at our age. But I think that is about it for this week now.
It is indeed, yeah. Well, it's been absolute blast talking to you again, and we should look forward to the race following on from this. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you've enjoyed our first pre-show, and as Bog said, if there's any content you'd like to see us add to it, just give us a yell. Any shout outs you want, any birthdays, anything like that, we'll consider them. As I say, this is as much about you as it is about us and DCR.
Yeah, it is. And I'm just very quickly checking if it is anyone's birthday today. April 5th. No, I don't think it is. But if I missed you, I apologize. Next week it is, actually. But we'll talk about more of that next week.
Absolutely. Okay. Right. Well, I hope you've all enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoy the race following on from this. So from myself, Nell, I say goodbye. Thanks ever so much.
Yeah. So thank you for listening. See you next weekend preview show, and see you tonight in the race.